Brew Studios.
Hi, I'm Samiran.
Hi, I'm Nilesh.
Hi, I'm Sheetal, and you're listening to 3TB.
Three Techies Banter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sheetal Choksi. Welcome to 3TB, a podcast where three techies banter. Though in today's podcast, it's going to be four people who are going to banter. But welcome to 3TB. It's a podcast where we explore tech the non tech way. It's about how tech and the economics behind the tech impacts us today and in the future. It's fun, it's full of information, and like Samiran says, we want to own the space called fun tech. So we will make sure that every time we give you an episode, you will have fun with it, you will learn something new, and you will have a lot of understanding of the tech. Today's episode is the last in our month's theme of everyday tech, and we decided to close the theme on a topic that all of us love: OTT. All of us have our favorite platforms, we have our favorite shows, and what we thought we'd do in today's episode is to deep dive a little more into the tech in OTT. We've promised we'll bring you fun. So, in order to bring a little more, how should I say, knowledge and fun to the table, we have a very, very interesting guest. We have with us Kirtan Adhyanthay, who is the founder of Serendipity Media Tech. Why did we think of Kirtan when we thought of OTT? Here's why. Prior to being the co-founder of Serendipity Media Tech, he was the head of content and communication for the Walt Disney Company, the EVP of content and marketing for Fox Networks Group Asia, and the MD of National Geographic Channel India. I'm just naming a few companies. Okay, he's got a lot more experience than that. So today's episode is all about OTT. It's not a question and answer session. It's just a fun session. And Sabiran, do you want to do a little bit on the India OTT, and Kirtan, whatever you want to add to it?
Yeah, sure, Sheetal. So I think when we started, we were thinking about this whole paradox saying, and we decided we'll try this Buradan's ass, which is about that hay and the water. But I think unfortunately none of us wanted to be either an ass or wanted to be caught between water and hay. So I found another one which is actually called the infinite monkey theorem. So that, in fact, what it says literally is that if you give a monkey a typewriter and it keeps typing, ultimately it will, by just sheer theory of probability, it will type out Hamlet, because it will figure out the exact keystrokes and get it. But I think, and I think that is also probably what the everyone's been looking for in terms of the secret sauce of what makes OTT successful. So while we have been just pure consumers of it, and we love this show and we don't like it and all of that, when you kind of dig deeper into it, I was like really surprised. I just went through some listed company data, and I was looking at Balaji, and for some crazy amount of, I think they have some 200 odd crores of revenue, I think 238 crores of revenue last year, but with zero profit. And even this year, like net margins are really low. Same is true even for, I just went and looked at some numbers for RRR, Bhul Bhulaiya and all that. So while revenues are 13% up, apparently if you kind of take out all costs, margins are like 5%. And very curiously, I looked at NDTV. I expect these guys must be bleeding to death. They are super profitable.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so I said, what the hell is going on? Like that's
traditional media is super profitable, and at this point, I think traditional media companies who have delved or jumped into OTT are actually using the profits from their traditional business to underwrite what they're doing in the OTT business, which actually is a good segue for me to talk about how today, and maybe even for the next 3 or 4 years, it's all going to be about a Wild West kind of a land grab, and this has happened at each wave when a new technology or a new mode of viewership or listenership comes into place. There are different media companies, new media companies, old media companies who jump into the fray, and then they want to grab their own piece of land, shelf space, so to say. This has happened, for example, in the past with television, right? At one point, there was it was the age of, or the era of peak television, when we had like hundreds of TV channels, and we didn't know what to do with that many TV channels. There was a TV channel for every very sliced up niche possible that you could think of. Some of those have survived, many have shut down. And similarly, today you'll see that there are so many OTT or streaming video companies that have started business and are trying to serve these super niche categories. And maybe 3 or 4 years down the line, many of them will cease to exist. Um, if you look at the international OTT space, one of the early ones was somebody called Crunchyroll. And Crunchyroll actually was really interesting to everybody because they took a super niche, which was Japanese anime, and they made it a very big business by marketing Japanese anime on a streaming basis in the United States. And they had, at one point, they had about 50 million subscribers, paying subscribers, all
That's the
around the
key.
world. All around the world. That's absolutely the key. So if you look at Hotstar, for example, they have an active monthly user base of about 300 million unique users. But the paid subs that Hotstar has is 50 million. So there are 250, 5 times as many, users who are using the free version of Hotstar and watching ad-supported content. And if you think Hotstar is only about, for example, cricket, yes, cricket is a very big driver, especially IPL is a huge driver for Hotstar to have the kind of numbers that it does. But there is a humongous latent viewership for a lot of Hindi serials, for a lot of Bollywood movies, Asianet, which is Malayalam kind of content, which they also put on. Star is a behemoth of a media company who has a presence in almost every regional language that India has, right?
So, Kirtan, I have to ask you this, so this is something that we have, we who kind of primarily talk and broadcast and publish whatever in the English language, often now we are being told, at least of late, that, while you may appeal to a certain urban South Bombay, South Delhi kind of crowd,
Yeah.
but the vast portion of India that's consuming is actually completely regional. And I think that also kind of shows up in the either the Instagram, the TikTok, or the YouTube following of people. If I were to do this three techies banter in Hindi, I would probably have 10, 20 times this thing. I mean, is that kind of what data also shows?
Yeah, data also shows that, which is why, for example, when you watch cricket, cricket is available with so many new commentators. So you have the Hindi and English kind of cricket commentary, but you also have multiple languages, like, for example, Tamil and Kannada and Malayalam and Marathi and, Bengali commentary. And this was all, some of the early steps were taken during the television era, when channels like National Geographic or Discovery started dubbing themselves in multiple languages. Because we saw the success that everybody else has, the traditional media. And what OTT does, or what every new phase of media does, is it takes the learnings that the older media had and then applies it in a much better manner. So, for example, when OTT does it, they have access to lots of data, and they'll get a closer insight, a closer kind of a view of how many people are viewing this exactly in terms of, in a particular language. Do they watch certain kinds of content in the language closer to them and certain other kinds in English? For example, in Karnataka, cricket will be watched in English, but entertainment will be watched in Kannada. Right? So they get that kind of insight, and that informs them when they commission the next piece of content and the next piece of content and the next piece of content.
So I think when we also spoke just previously, you had also mentioned this thing about the difference between, and I think I found that very interesting, that the fact that people in the movies have different challenges, and OTT is obviously different. In the fact that in the movie you get big stars, you market like hell, and you get a person into the theater. And once they're in, and you give them the right quality of popcorn and coffee and what have you, then the person stays there. while the guy in the OTT is probably got a much more fickle bum. And then they just don't stick there.
Yes,
In the
yes,
moment,
yes.
they seem to be going all over the place. And I think that's also true from the programming. Uh, uh, Over a period of time, I seem to feel that I like this thing in Woot. They're probably good at this. I go to Hotstar for this, but maybe I'll go to Apple Original for something else. So it doesn't seem to be a winner take all. It seems to be like everybody has a mental makeup of what they uh, like or don't like.
It's all, they're holding that little controller in their hand, and they decide. They become the emperor of media, right? So for example, in movies we have this saying called suspension of disbelief. When you go and sit inside a movie theater and the lights get switched off, you suspend your disbelief. So, which is why a Rohit Shetty movie can have a Scorpio turning around 15,000 times and then landing on its wheels, right? Because you suspended your disbelief. You're sitting there and you're willing to believe whatever he says. But now with OTT, you're sitting at home. You have that controller in your hand. And you're like, I'm not going to suspend my disbelief. I'll disbelieve what is being shown to me, and I'll change the channel if I don't like what content, or I'll forget the channel, but I'll change, the program, or I'll change the platform. There's so many choices in front of you. And the other problem that OTT people really face is fatigue in decision making, because people sit in front of their TV set or their device, and they're scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, which is a habit that Instagram and Facebook have taught us. Scroll, scroll, scroll till you find something. So even here, they scroll and scroll and scroll. Even when they find something half interesting, it's like, okay, maybe I'll scroll 5 more screens and I'll find something even more interesting, right? So, and then you realize that you spent almost half an hour or 40 minutes in front of your device and still not found anything. And then, you've got to go attend to a call or something like that. So you don't end up consuming content really. And that's what's happened now. When COVID first hit us, that was a huge trigger point in adoption of OTT. Until then, people were still pretty satisfied with their TV service because they would pay 300 rupees to 500 rupees a month, and they had 500 TV channels, providing them with each and every damn thing that they could ever think of from all around the world. Every sport, everything that you wanted was in front of you. But then when COVID came around, suddenly they said, hey, what about I want to watch other languages? I want to watch a Malayalam movie. I want to watch a Bengali movie. I want to watch, a Spanish movie or a South American movie or, Money Heist in Spanish, and they got access to everything in the languages they wanted. Money Heist was dubbed in Hindi and everything, all the shows, Narcos. Suddenly you had people sitting in Patna talking about Narcos. All those changes happened. So people got exposed in a very short time to a lot of the best content around the world. So they got used to that content. And now they've run out of that, top quality, award-winning content, and you're left with a lot of trash, which they're pretty tired of watching now. So they keep flipping. And that's why you hear so many complaints about there's nothing good on Netflix anymore, or there's nothing great on, XYZ service anymore.
So, Kirtan, tell me this, right? We all knew that television, it was 13 episodes minimum, which had to be recorded before you went on air, things like that. And then you saw the popularity of the show and you decided whether the next 13 would become another 3,000 or not. But how does it operate in the OTT space, right? Is it again all third, because I've seen limited series, I've seen 3 episodes, I've seen 8, I have seen 22 on a spot that I was recently watching with my daughter. How does it work? How does it operate?
So there are 2 distinct buckets here. Actually 3 buckets when I'm talking about the international shows, and then I'll talk about the Indian shows as well. So the international shows primarily come from the American market. And in America, there is something called network television, which is like, Doordarshan kind of channels. And then there is cable television. Now, the network television platforms all wanted upwards of 13 episodes when they commissioned any show. But usually, even if it's a sitcom, they would ask for 26 episodes. So, a Friends would have like a 26 episodes every year. How I Met Your Mother would have that. And if it was like a 1 hour kind of a drama, either it was a daytime soap opera, which would mean 100 plus episodes in a year, or if it was something which was more topical, dramatic, etc., they would have about anywhere between 15 to 20 episodes. And you have to understand that, and cable would commission 13 episodes. You have to understand that Netflix's origin came as being a library video service, which then transitioned to streaming. So initially, they completely operated on library shows, putting that entire library together, and then you can watch what you want. And then once they tasted success in that, and they got access to a lot of data and insights and everything, they said, hey, we've mined so much about these 55, 60 million people who are watching Netflix. Why don't we commission our own shows? So when they first started commissioning, even they commissioned anywhere between 10 to 13 episodes, because that was a sweet spot. You get enough meat so that you grow to like the characters and identify with the characters and form a bond with whatever you're watching. And then when you commission the second season, you come back to watch it. So that's how it all started. Now, as time has gone by, certain stories that Netflix has, like a documentary, it doesn't have enough meat in it to tell a story for more than 4 episodes or 5 episodes. So now they're good to commission even a shorter kind of a series, which has fewer episodes. So that's really how it works.
So this is very interesting. So there's one of the things which I've always found super curious in this OTT, or maybe I don't know whether it falls in TV or cable or whatever. One is this thing that you get. This is the pilot episode, and then it begins. Does it really mean that if people don't like the pilot, they'll pull it off? And that's one thing. And the other thing I find very strange is I've kind of grown accustomed to the fact that if it's Indian or if it's American, it is going to be shorter episodes. But if it's British, they're really long episodes, and they have a number of episodes are short. I mean, I was completely fascinated by how they could run Sherlock Holmes for 3 episodes and stop it, and then come back again and do 3. And it used to be hugely popular. So is it the quality of their production?
It's because BBC is government funded, so they can do what they want without really
like that.
Without really bothering about making a profit. So as soon as you have to make a profit, you're thinking of, hey, I'm going to commission this piece of content, and if it's successful, I want people to wait for the second season of it, and then I do not want to spend the same amount of money marketing it so that they come and watch season 2, right? That's a golden kind of unicorn that we in the business are looking for, where you create a very you market it well, and you create a successful piece of content which lasts for 5 or 6 seasons, and then you don't have to spend as much money to market it anymore, and it keeps acquiring more and more viewers. That's the golden unicorn everybody looks for, right? But in the case of BBC, who commissions Sherlock Holmes out of there, etc., they don't really have the profit concerns and those kinds of things. They know they're pretty much in a space where people have to pay them no matter what.
I thought they had some secret source of serial production that other people didn't know, that they could make 3 and disappear.
And to answer the other thing you asked about, the pilot episode. So the pilot episode works really as what we do is we first commission somebody to make a single episode, saying, okay, this is your vision, here's a sum of money, go out and commission the episode. And then we'll take a look, we'll test that episode, we'll expose it to a number of panels and discussions and all that, and then see whether we want to commission more of it. So that episode gets shot, then we go out and test that episode. If it scores very positively, then we commission the producer to make 8, 10, 12 episodes, as the need may be. And then we put that on air. Usually when we put it on, we never call it the pilot episode. Some people call it the pilot episode. Usually the viewer is never supposed to know that was the episode. That was the pilot.
Okay.
So Kirtan, before we go into the next segment, which is more about consumer questions, etc., I just want to end this on a couple of interesting data points from you, right? So, just to
Mhm.
get a sense from you as to how large is and I'm not doing global OTT, I'm going to stay with Indian OTT.
Okay.
How
All right.
large is the Indian OTT market?
The market is sized at $1.1 billion, which is about 9,000 crores.
Okay.
That's the size
And
of the
what kind
market.
of viewers, what numbers of viewers are we looking at?
Hotstar, like I told you, is the largest player in the market, and they have about 50 million paid subscribers with 300 million active monthly users and 100 million DAUs, daily active users. Everybody else is way smaller than that. And there is an entire tier. For example, there's Amazon Prime Video, which is pretty large. I think they're in the range of 7 to 8 million paid subs. But a lot of it is due to the shopping needs that people have. It's a pretty good service to have, but you can't really ascribe all of it to they want to watch the videos. That's why they're Amazon Prime subscribers, or they only want to do shopping. That's why, because they actually do have good content as well. A lot of movies. And then, other than that, there is Netflix, who is hovering around 3.5 or 4 million in India. Then there is Woot, which is coming up in a big way. There is Sony Live. There is Z5. Then there is Sun in the south, which has multiple languages. Now, if you look at whether it is Amazon or Hotstar or Woot, Live, Z5, they all also have multiple regional language products on their service. They dub the southern movies into Hindi, and they dub the Hindi movies into southern languages. So it's a multi-language kind of offering that all these people have. Now, in addition to this, there is another player called Eros Now, who have about 12,000 movies. They have 100,000 music videos. They have about 100 TV shows. So they're pretty, nascent. And they don't call out the numbers only from India, but globally they have 36 million paid subs. So they're pretty big as well. Then there's, of course, people like Alt Balaji, MX Now, who are commissioning. So these guys are commissioning a lot of shows purely for digital. So you'll see the quality, the kind of content the shows have is very different. Then there are a bunch of other languages like Oriya and Bengali, small players, but they're serving that niche. So they're serving, for example, like what I spoke about earlier, Crunchyroll, right? Which was serving Japanese anime to Japanese anime consumer. So these guys are serving their particular language to their audiences.
So if you were to bet your money, would it be more towards English content? Would it be more towards local, regional language content?
Completely local language content. So they're doing the right thing by dubbing a lot of content into local languages, but I think they need to take it to the next step where really good dubbing takes place. So, the thing about dubbing is you could have a disinterested voice doing it, or you could have somebody actually emote in that voice, right? Emote in that language. That is not up to the mark at the moment, So that needs to be improved. Once that happens, it will go places. And coming back to international content versus Indian content, one of the things one of the learnings that we've had over many years of doing content is that international content, actually content is like food. You like to have an Italian meal or a Spanish meal or some, if you're talking about semi-urban India, you like to go and have a little bit of Chinese. But at the end of the day, you want, of the 21 meals a week, you'll have maybe 2 or 3 meals which are external. The rest of the 18 meals, you want your dal, chawal, or whatever in the south, rasam, sambar.
Very nicely put.
Right? So that's the same. They want content. They want faces that they can identify with and the language that they're familiar with. As soon as it is alien, they'll watch a little bit, but beyond that, they want to go back to the dal chawal.
So in the last, and this is going to be my last question before I end this segment, anything that has caught you by surprise in the last couple of years when it comes to OTT, things which seemed so counterintuitive, especially because you've been in the content space, right? And you're constantly looking at stuff and saying this should work, and then it doesn't, or something which is totally caught you off guard in the Indian OTT space?
Um, the rapid rate of adoption. I think the rate of adoption has really caught a lot of people by surprise, because the way data prices dropped in India, that's not happened anywhere else in the world. So we thought the data rates would be a more gradual descent. But Geo entered the market and suddenly the data rates dropped. And as soon as data rates dropped, you could access all this content wherever you wanted to, right? That proved to be a big driver of your driver, your helper, everybody sitting and constantly. We have become a nation of zombies. Oh, everybody's just looking at this all the time, right? And they are consuming content all the time. It's not like they're only using messaging services. If you peep into their phones, they're watching something which is video product.
Super. I'm going to end this segment, and we'll come back in with the second segment, which is going to be all questions that consumers want to know about OTT. So
All right,
we'll be back.
I'm ready.
Hi, welcome back to the second segment. We had a very insightful chat with Kirtan, and we thought in the second section we will talk about kind of queries that consumers of OTT may have. Sacred Games, Ghoul, and there were a couple of others also. And Netflix was somehow just putting out that kind of content when it came to Indian shows, right?
Yeah.
And then there is on the other side was one of the topmost shows of IMDb of all times, kind of Breaking Bad, right? And Breaking Bad was followed up with Better Call Saul. Now these are also not really they are strange genres, firstly, and second, the storyline is also kind of I don't know what to say. My son, we for a very, very long time and stopped him for watching it. Then he got hooked on to Breaking Bad once he started watching it. And he's just a super big fan of Breaking Bad. As per him, that's the best ever
show ever. Yeah, I think I'll be friends with your son, because even I agree. Breaking Bad is one of the best, like among my top 3 shows ever. So coming to Breaking Bad. So Breaking Bad was a cable show. We spoke a little earlier about cable shows versus network shows in the US. So Breaking Bad was a cable show commissioned by AMC TV channels. AMC TV channel is a branch of AMC, the movie theater chain. Just like PVR is a chain here. Think of them commissioning a channel and then commissioning content. So Breaking Bad was a show commissioned by them. AMC was not a very heavily distributed channel. And this show appeared on the channel about a chemistry professor who turns to crime. He breaks bad. And he starts becoming a manufacturer of crystal meth, methamphetamines. When it first started, people didn't know what to expect, because it was a very unconventional kind of a show. And it wasn't very well distributed. Now, we spoke a little earlier about how Netflix, when they started, they were more like a video library, right? So in that, when they turned to streaming and the streaming video library, they went and got a lot of these shows which had high IMDb ratings or high Rotten Tomato ratings. And Breaking Bad was one of them. It had a very small cult of very passionate people. And I think at that point, Breaking Bad had about 3 seasons. It was 3 seasons into the show. That's when Netflix put it on. And they noticed that people who start watching the show binge watch it and watch all 3 seasons, like back to back to back to back to back. It was almost like how 24 was for all of us, right? We started binge watching 24. And then Netflix said, hey, this is a pretty good thing. And AMC, on the other hand, this show was made by Sony Columbia TriStar. AMC at that point was really wondering whether they want to renew the show for a 4th season or not. So Netflix went and threw a bucket of money at them and said, just do it. We'll put it on Netflix, right? So they ended up getting 5 seasons of the show, which was very good. And then the story came to an end. And at that point, the producers were thinking of, hey, what do we do next? Do we do a sequel like everybody does? But the makers of Breaking Bad think the other way. And they said, let's do a prequel. And one of the most iconic characters in the show was this rotten lawyer called Saul Goodman. And they said, let's make a show about Saul Goodman and how he came into being. And they made Better Call Saul, which just came to an end earlier this week. On Tuesday, we got the episode. And 6 seasons of Better Call Saul. One of the most fantastic shows once again. It was really, really good. So that's really how that show was commissioned, first by a cable channel, and then Netflix came midway through, proved to be the knight in shining armor, and made multiple seasons of, and another prequel of the show.
Kirtan, there's popular belief that today's shows are being chosen by AI and not by people at various platforms, right? Because there's so many people sending in proposals with so many stories and, test episodes and things like that. How does a show get chosen?
So it's not completely AI. If you read what people like Reed Hastings have to say, etc., they want more of their people to have an insight into why a show gets made, why a show gets chosen. Now, what they do is they mine a lot of data. They have access to a hell of a lot of data, and they mine that too. For example, everything from, they release some data to all of the world at large. Things like how many minutes of a show or a movie have been watched, and it's cumulative numbers. So they'll say, hey, this movie got watched 1.4 billion minutes. Like, what do you do with that data? I don't know. They basically want to wow you with something. It's more for the stock analysts than anybody else, because as a industry person, I can't do anything when 1.4 billion minutes or so and so thing was watched. But they internally have access to much more data. Things like, at what point did people tune out? And that is a very insightful piece, because if you have a certain movie and that movie saw a new character come in and immediately within a minute people start tuning out, that they didn't like that person. Or if it's a Bollywood movie and there's a song and people are tuning out, then that there's a certain segment and that's 30% of the audience does not like songs in a movie. And you can then use that to inform yourself when you commission the next piece of content. So they have access to this kind of data. So they also have access to, okay, which of our audience, like the very first thing that everybody started, even in this service, was like what Amazon used to do, which is, if you like this, then you should read this, right? People who bought this also bought this. So that is the basic level of, content recommendation. But internally, you can use that to say, hey, 40% of people who watched Breaking Bad also watched Narcos. Therefore, there's a link between them. And 40% of our audience actually likes this kind of narcotics, drug-related, crime-related content. So maybe we should make more of it. Right? That's how they inform themselves when they commission content. But other than that, one of the things that Netflix does is every market they've gone to, they try and commission local content. And they go to the biggest maker. They'll go to a Shah Rukh Khan when they come to India. They'll go to a Karan Johar when they come to India. They'll identify the top talent and they'll overpay that talent. Like if Shah Rukh Khan was making a TV show or a movie for 20 crores, they'll go and pay him 50 crores and say, make the content. Now, there are two purposes that are served in this. One, you suddenly set the bottom of the market, instead of it being at top being at 20, you set the bottom at 50, right? So now anybody else who wants Shah Rukh or Karan has to fight with that kind of money. And these guys have very deep pockets because they can go and market that content all over the world. Whereas the traditional players really don't have the bandwidth to market it all over the world. So they can, get viewers from everywhere and therefore defray the cost of content. So that's what Netflix does. They go to Vietnam, they'll go to Korea, they'll go everywhere and they'll commission the top creator to create the next best thing. So for example, they went to Korea, got the guy who directed Parasite to make a TV show for them. Now he's still making that show. It'll be ready sometime. But that's what they do. So now everybody is a contemporary of that guy. says, I want the same price that he got. And they all will go to Netflix first with the best content. So those are the two purposes that are served there. And the other thing that Netflix does is they market it in very different ways. So, for example, a particular show like House of Cards, it will have 20 different trailers. One trailer which will get exposed to me, which will talk about the more criminal aspects of what Kevin Spacey is doing. Another one which will be made for women audiences, and that will talk about more of Claire Danes or anybody else who's in the show, powerful women. So they cut trailers according to the audience segments that they have.
So as a researcher, right, in the past, I have done work with channels, and I won't name the channels, but we've done work, right, where we've gone and asked, we've had panels and we've asked them to react to shows and things like that. And it's very interesting because very often you say this character is losing relevance, and suddenly you find that 4 episodes later they've killed the character, right, in the to keep the show alive. I'm just trying to understand. So here's a lot of data which is available to them at the end. But sometimes you could, it's not pure data like as a consumer would tell you. So is that like a balance that you all do, which is go out there, do research with consumers, marry it to data? How does that operate? Sorry, this is the researcher in me asking these questions.
Yeah. So think of these services, Hotstar, Netflix, whatever, as giant research panels that are available, right? They have even gone so far as to have two different storylines in the same episode. Segment one, A, which is shown to one set of audiences, B, which is shown to the other, and then they say which stuck to people.
I mean, just to jump in. I mean, can you kind of name one like that? I mean, I'm very curious to know. I mean, does a name?
They have not disclosed it, but we know of A/B testing that they've done. And these are all technology practices, right? Like Google does A/B testing all the time. So Netflix has followed the same thing of doing A/B testing.
No. When Keertan was telling, talking about this, the first thing that came to my mind was A/B testing, and it is so prevalent in technology industry that your websites, you just do A/B testing with your apps and websites and stuff like that, and you push that content either geography specific or gender specific, get feedback, and then kind of do this thing. So yeah, very much familiar with this.
For example, they've done things like. They have these power users who are binging like 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day. So in the US, they've released content to them 4 days in advance of everybody else because they know that these guys then are so passionate, and then they'll talk to so many people about it and bring so many other people to come and watch the service, right? So they do all these kinds of disruptionary kind of tactics.
It's I come from the world of retail, right? So it's what the loyalty First Citizens used to be for Shopper Stop, where you did a sale preview and everybody rushed in like the sale was going to end at the end of the preview, which wasn't the truth, right? It was going to run for another 6 weeks. But yes, there is so much, A, the sense of I'm special, B, the sense of, I'm privileged because I'm going to get exposed to the best things. So yeah, I love the concept of the power users. Sabiran, you had something to say.
So I was just intrigued, actually, now that we're talking about tech and all that, is this whole thing about micro and subcategorization that these people are able to do. It's just so. I was just going through this list of Netflix genres. So apparently they have 350 genres. So I said, let me try and find some funny ones. And they have at least more than 40 or 50 genres starting with the word goofy. It says goofy Chinese movies, goofy animal tales, goofy detective movies, goofy coming of age movies, goofy courtrooms. I mean, it's just goofy all over the place. I mean, goofy satires from the 1980s, goofy war comedies, goofy zombie movies. I mean, I'm like, and this is just goofy, right? So, but obviously, so one is, of course, their ability to capture this at a micro level because they know exactly who's watching what. But what do they do with this? Do they actually kind of then go back and make shows that kind of if you like goofy zombie movies, then will they give you more goofy zombie movies? Or if you like zombies, you may also like vampires and give you those?
Yeah. So how, when we commission content, etc., we always try to serve different audience segments. So, you have this thing in content that there's big hit content, right? Now, the big hit content will get you 40-45% of your audience. Okay. But then the balance 55% don't really fit into that. So then there are slivers of audience segments, and you got to bring those guys in, and you got to keep them satisfied. And to do that is where content like Ghoul or Goofy stuff, or Goofy, primarily that content categorization comes from the US again, and there's an older audience segment there who need what we call time pass content. So you see things like Just for Laughs, for example. I don't know if you've seen those gag reels, Just for Laughs. That all fits under that goofy kind of segment, and those are really popular in America, Canada, Europe, etc.
So, Samiran, as you age and as I age, we will become the goofy content consumers. Okay, right now we are not.
I was just looking at the list, that time pass content is not a category in Netflix. We could give them a suggestion that there should be a whole category called time pass of all kinds.
Time pass says while you're waiting for your order. Okay, sorry.
No, but somehow, one thing that comes to mind is like when Keertan spoke about, it's an interesting mechanism. So you get the best guy, and you set a bar so high and stuff like that. But in the end, you still have to create content, right? And for a long time, at least on the Netflix side, I started this. We started this segment talking about sacred games and Ghoul and stuff like that, and you could see a particular actor also repeating. So initially there was a lot of Radhika Apte coming up in 2-3 serials, and what I sometimes wonder isn't it killing creativity by making it so damn scientific, right? Based on so many AI led parameters, that sometimes you start wondering that will you ever commission content like, and I'll take a very vague example because I've heard not many people can consume it, content created by Satyajit Ray, let's say. Will it ever get picked? Because it's a great content, but what happens? Because I couldn't for a long time understand those serials coming especially from India, right? Sacred Games was still okay, Ghoul, and there was one or two others. I mean, I
But for example, there was that period drama that Netflix had done about A Suitable Boy.
Yeah.
Right? It was done very, very in that Nazuk manner of, very beautiful filmmaking, very nice shots, the attire and everything was very good. But I think they went wrong in the language. It was an English show. Yeah. It was an Indian show made for Britain, perhaps. So I reckon that's a little bit where they went.
But Nilesh, to your point about Satyajit Ray movies, at the cost of being completely ostracized by fellow Bengalis, I think anybody who's watching it is probably a lead indicator of mental health issues or something.
But Samiran, there is a way to contemporize anything, right? A William Shakespeare show can be made into an Omkara. You have to, I think, adapt some of these great pieces of literature to modern times, and then they'll definitely work. And going back to the previous question, Nilesh, of how much is AI informing the creative process, or how much is it influencing or hampering creativity in people? I think a lot of freedom is still given to creators by most of the platforms. They use the data mining to form the brief of, the kind of brief that they give content creators of what audiences are looking for, what has proved to be very sticky with audiences. And then they give a lot of power to the creator to go out and create content. I think a little bit where things have gone astray at the moment is the development process. In the older days when TV channels were developing shows, there was much more collaboration between the TV producers uh, and the executive producers. Executive producers usually come from the channel side, and they are experts in what audiences they have, and they would do a lot of back and forth uh, with the TV show producer, and therefore make the show. But now, because a lot of movie guys are coming in and making TV shows, um, the platforms are just giving them a free hand, saying, "आप तो जानते हो movie कैसे बनाना है, आप बना लो TV show." But many of them don't know the high points of TV versus movie, and that was a thing that Samiran earlier we spoke about, of suspension of disbelief, or what a movie has to market in terms of just getting the bum into the seat, paying a ticket price, versus how TV has to keep you engaged throughout the show, build high points for every segment where you have to come back. Just the same way you all did the podcast, where you had a segment 1 and then you gave a tease into what's going to happen in segment 2, right? Maybe this is a good segue to go into segment 3.
Yeah, and probably convert this into an OTT show.
Absolutely. Everything behind the scenes on OTT is what's coming up in segment 3. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in a couple of seconds.
Hi, welcome back to the third and final section of this chat. I would like to start this section with the tech part of it, right? And Sheetal, Samir, and Kirtan. I mean, I have a couple of friends who started with Netflix way back, when it was just a startup, and uh, they were mentioning about how Netflix, especially, is more a tech company than anything else. They position themselves like that. Honestly, it gave them great valuations, and I think in one of our previous episodes we talked about it, that these days, for valuations, everyone is becoming a tech company. Whether you are an oil giant or an actual tech company, you are a tech company is how you position. So, but having said that,
Right.
I remember that Netflix has actually given some very interesting pieces of technology and architecture to the software and world in general. And I'll just quickly talk about something which I found very interesting. I used it long time back, called Chaos Monkey. And Chaos Monkey was something Netflix came up with. And it was basically, Netflix is essentially, their bread and butter is streaming, right? And you have multiple servers which are streaming, and your audience, there should not be any disruption to your viewing experience. So to test it, it's very difficult to simulate such conditions, right? When you are testing your platform architecture. So what these guys did was they created a software, a piece of code called Chaos Monkey, and essentially this piece of code used to just disrupt streaming randomly. So you don't even know what happens. Something will just go off, or they will just switch some stream to somewhere else. Do it. So the code was written in a way that it should disrupt, and it was obviously led them to create a very resilient platform. But this concept has become so important in the industry today that when I was with Mastercard, and in a different way, Mastercard has to be always up, right? I mean, your credit card, transaction gets declined, and you are in a soup. So many people in payments industry also use this concept called Chaos Monkey, whereby you just disrupt your servers and see what happens to the end user experience. So a lot of interesting tech has come into being because of these OTT platforms. Can you think of anything else? I mean, I could think of Chaos Monkey. The other thing is the fact that streaming technology has gone to a next level. Absolutely, right? I mean, we talked about bandwidth, also cheap bandwidth. The fact is, this uninterrupted streaming itself has become, and how do you make it extremely efficient? It has a lot of that has come from this industry. So from the tech perspective, I think there are a lot of things this all these OTT platforms have provided.
So one of the things I'm noticing is that there's a lot of reference to monkeys. And in this episode, we could even call our episode Planet of the Apes, I think. But go ahead with that.
Samiran, a new category, goofy monkeys.
Creating chaos.
Creating chaos.
If you continue like this, and if we ask Kirtan that can Three Techies Banter become a show, he will say put it into Goofy Monkeys category. So
Goofy monkeys.
Or maybe even anime. I think we might qualify for that now.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the other things is the massive load factor that can get imposed at times of sporting events, which are being streamed. That is something that is great for development of the networks around the country, around the world, and to see that there is absolutely no disruption. Imagine when a cricket final is being played or an NFL final is being played, the amount of video footage that is being transmitted to the number of users that it's being transmitted. Because it's not like the old days anymore, where you send one signal out and millions of people receive that one signal. Here, when a million people want to watch one signal, a million signals have to go out, right? So that is the one big thing. Now, if you look at the technology part of things, there's really three segments into which it can be broken down. One is the video hosting platform. That's where all these entertainment companies will go and put their videos. So it may be Netflix, it may be Hotstar, it may be whoever. So they'll go and create a video hosting platform. And much of the time, many of these are white label services. So for example, MLB, Major League Baseball, they were one of the earlier ones who created a fantastic service because they had these massive volumes of viewers coming in to watch it, and they needed it to happen without any disruption. So they created it for themselves, and they created a white label service that they then marketed out to many people. Then that white label service, you should be allowed to have your own brand customization. Now, that brand customization is not just pasting a few logos here and there. Everything on that screen, you should be able to move everywhere else. And finally, video monetization, because you might have a service which is just about a subscription and you watch everything, but there are other services in which first episode is free, next episode is paid, or the rest of it is paid. So all these kinds of customization need to happen. And then finally, security itself, right? The whole username, password, authentication, not being able to hack that service and download all the videos, all of that need to be of paramount importance. Brightco is a company which does a lot of this and provides white label services to the rest of the industry. The second big segment is the content delivery network. And in this space, AWS is the leader. Everybody uses AWS. Quality of streaming is really the benchmark on or the currency on which we rate them, and they provide the best quality of service. They provide us servers all over the world in the smallest of towns, which have all our shows which are needed. And then finally, the third segment of technology is your video playing software or your app or whatever. Now, that app needs to work on different smartphones. You will be shocked to hear of the number of smartphones that it needs to operate on. It's not just, even in Apple, it needs to be resized for every screen size. The new ones have X inches screen, the older ones have a different size of screen. And if you go into the Android kind of ecosystem, you'll tear your hair out. And I remember when we were launching Disney Plus in Southeast Asia, it was like on Android, we first went after the Samsung phones and some of the others. And even after a year, in terms of numbers of Android phones, we were only across 30 phones, and there were still 80 phones to be done. So that just shows how much customization is needed on that. And then, your app also needs to be available on laptops, computers, smart TVs. There are so many devices here. So that becomes another rat's nest that you need to sort through. The Apple devices, the Chromecast devices, Google, the whole Amazon Fire Stick, everything, right? So this really, these are the three big segments. Of course, within them, each segment has much more going on in terms of technology within it, of the whole security, payment, all of those issues as well. So it's for most of our companies, technology is almost 40% of our cost base. Content will be 53% of our cost base, and the rest of it is 7-8%, 10%.
Wow, that is amazing, because I would have never thought that there's so much of investment in technology. One would have always thought that, higher investments in content and in creation and all of that, and marketing and things like that, were not so much in
Huge.
tech.
Technology bandwidth is huge.
And this brings us to the end of another episode of 3TB. If you liked our banter, please share the episode. Don't forget to follow the show. We are available on all major podcast platforms. If you're an Apple podcast, please do leave a rating and review. It helps the podcast grow. So see you next time at another new theme. Bye-bye.